It's 1951. Iran is sitting on top of one of the largest oil reserves on the planet. Their economy is booming. Their cities are growing. Their people, for the first time in decades, actually have hope. And then one man decides to do something that no leader in the Middle East had ever dared to do before. He looked at the Western oil companies bleeding his country dry and he said, "Enough. This oil belongs to Iran, and Iran is taking it back." 2 years later, that same man was sitting in a prison cell. Iran's currency had collapsed. Their economy was in ruins, and their oil, it was right back in the hands of Western companies. So what happened in those 2 years? What went so wrong, so fast? And why does this story from 1953 explain almost everything about the conflict happening in the Middle East today? This is one of the most important financial stories of the last 100 years, and almost nobody knows the full picture. First, let's understand what Iran actually looked like in 1950. Because to understand the betrayal, you need to understand what they had to lose. In 1950, Iran was the largest oil producer in the entire Middle East. Not Saudi Arabia, not Iraq. Iran. Their oil fields were among the most productive in the world, and they had been pumping since the early 1900s. The country had a growing middle class, a functioning government, universities, newspapers, and a parliament called the Majlis that was actively debating policy. By regional standards, Iran was advanced. Iran was wealthy. Iran had a future, but there was one problem. Almost none of that oil money was actually staying in Iran. To understand what happened next, you need to meet one man. His name was Mossadegh became Iran's prime minister in 1951 through a democratic process. And he was very different from most politicians in the region. He wasn't corrupt. He wasn't controlled by foreign powers. He was deeply committed to one simple idea. Iran's resources should benefit Iranian people. Today that sounds obvious, but in 1951, that idea was considered extremely dangerous. Because since 1913, Iran's oil had been controlled by a British company called the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company. Today, that company is known as BP. British Petroleum. And here is the number that made Mossadegh furious. The Anglo-Iranian Oil Company was taking about 85% of the profits from Iranian oil. Iran itself, the country that owned the land and the oil, was receiving just 15%. Imagine someone digging gold in your backyard, selling it for $1 million, and giving you only $150,000. That was Iran's relationship with Britain, and it got worse. The company refused to open its financial books to Iran. They refused independent audits. When Iran asked for a fair 50-50 profit split, which was becoming common in other countries, the company refused. So Mossadegh went to Iran's parliament and proposed something revolutionary. He proposed nationalizing the oil industry, taking it back completely. On March 15th, 1951, the Iranian parliament voted. The bill passed. Iran's oil now belonged to Iran. Britain reacted immediately, and they were furious. Instead of negotiating, Britain launched economic warfare. They organized a global boycott of Iranian oil. They pressured oil companies around the world not to buy Iranian oil. They placed naval ships near Iranian ports, effectively blockading the country. They also worked to isolate Iran financially from the global economy. Within months, Iran's economy began to suffer badly. At first, the United States was somewhat sympathetic to Iran. President Harry Truman and his administration believed Mossadegh was a legitimate democratic leader. They even pressured Britain to negotiate a fair agreement. But in 1953, Dwight Eisenhower became president of the United States, and everything changed. Eisenhower's advisors were deeply worried about communism. The Soviet Union shared a border with Iran. American intelligence officials warned that if Mossadegh's government collapsed, communist forces might take control. Whether that fear was realistic is still debated by historians. But the decision was made. Mossadegh had to be removed. What happened next became one of the most controversial intelligence operations in modern history. The CIA called it Operation Ajax. British intelligence called it Operation Boot. The plan was simple: destabilize Iran's government from the inside. The CIA and British intelligence funded propaganda campaigns against Mossadegh. They paid newspaper editors to publish negative stories about him. They funded street protests and riots. They paid gangs to create chaos in Tehran. Fake stories spread claiming Mossadegh was secretly a communist and an enemy of religion. The entire operation cost about $1 million. Just $1 million to overthrow a democratically elected government. On August 19, 1953, the plan succeeded. Pro-Shah military forces seized key locations in Tehran. Mossadegh was arrested and later sentenced to prison. After serving time, he lived under house arrest until his death. Meanwhile, the Shah of Iran, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, returned to power with strong American support. He would rule Iran for the next 26 years. After the coup, a new oil agreement was signed in 1954. On paper, it looked better for Iran. The Shah used oil money to strengthen his government. He built a powerful security agency known as SAVAK. Political opponents were often arrested, tortured, or forced into exile. Iran became one of America's strongest allies in the Middle East. But many ordinary Iranians felt excluded from the country's growing oil wealth. Economic inequality grew. Urban populations increased rapidly. Inflation rose, and dissatisfaction with the Shah's government spread. For millions of Iranians, it seemed their country's resources were enriching a small elite while ordinary people struggled. Eventually, that anger exploded. In 1979, mass protests swept across Iran. The Shah fled the country. A new Islamic government took power. And the memory of the 1953 coup became a central part of Iran's national story. For many Iranians, the coup symbolized foreign interference in their country's future. That memory deeply shaped relations between Iran and the United States for decades. Events like the 1979 hostage crisis, economic sanctions, and ongoing political tensions cannot be fully understood without looking back at 1953. History has a way of compounding. The decisions made decades ago continue to influence the world today. Understanding this history does not require taking sides, but it does help explain why distrust between nations can last for generations. When you follow the money, the story often becomes clearer. And in the case of Iran's oil, the financial stakes were enormous. If you found this story interesting, consider subscribing for more deep dives into the financial history that shapes the modern world.